everyone. Welcome back to Logical Magic, Examining Esoterica. Hey guys, today I have an episode for you where we're talking about the unintended consequences of manifestation and magic. Because when they say that all magic comes with a cost, all manifestation, which does include the law of attraction, and all magic does come with a cost. Is that the same thing as a penalty or a punishment? No, it's not. But what it is a rebalancing of energies. So I'm going to be going into a couple of stories that illustrate what the unintended consequences are. I'm going to be talking a little bit about some magic that I did that really worked, and some magic that I did that really is incredibly complex and had gigantic unintended consequences. But let's get started first with the housekeeping. I'm Alane. You can find me at therisingmoon.com to book me for a tarot card reading or a life coaching session. I really focus on personal growth, life's purpose tarot as well, which helps people heal from their trauma. First, we have to heal before we can step into our purpose. And in fact, if you are doing any law of attraction work, any manifestation work, you have to try and heal your inner trauma and resolve your shadow side conflicts first. And that's what everybody has to do. It's the work that we have to do. And after you do that, you will find that you are able to manifest very easily, and that your magic also will have a bigger consequence as well. So you can find me at therisingmoon.com exclusively. It's the only way to book me. And you can also find me at Chromecast at The Rising Moon on YouTube, which is where all the video versions of these particular podcasts go. And you can find me through my Patreon, where I do Spirit Guide Weekly and Spirit Guide Monthly and special messages as well. I'm also teaching some tarot in reverse there. All of these things will be either linked in the episode description notes below or in the description box down below. Let's keep talking about unintended consequences, because it is something that, here's one of the macro things where we step outside and see, well, how can I see this at work in the greater world? I'm sure we have all noticed that there has been a loss of a grounded reality in multiple areas of the world. Different people from different political camps are absolutely, completely wedded to the idea of this absolutely happened, even though it's not factual. Now, can it be on both sides? It can, in fact, be on both sides, but it is predominant in one particular area where people are convinced of conspiracies very easily, like the government controlling the weather, as a for instance, which is a very recent one and the easiest one to point to. So what might cause a whole group of people to no longer be grounded in reality, to be prone to this almost delusional thinking? And I'm not calling people deluded, it's just that we're able to be influenced. And remember, magic and manifestation is an energetic influence. When there's too much power play at work in the world, where people are trying to grab too much power, which again, magic and manifestation are expressions of power, then it knocks things off of balance. And it's just a little bit that simple, is that people who aren't going through all of their healing and all of their grounding and making sure that they check with multiple sources, doing their due diligence, have lost their footing in reality. And it doesn't make them evil, it just makes them human. Everybody can be influenced. And so there's a lot of energetic influences that has to do with a world that is very clearly off balance. I don't need to go into all of those ways. So that's the macro. Let's start talking about the more micro. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how to minimize unintended consequences. And a very brief example of what an unintended consequence might be is, let's say that you want your dream job. It's your dream job and you've been trying to manifest it. You've been trying to do magic to make it happen. Are manifestation and magic the same thing? A little bit. They are. Manifestation is part of when you do all the visualization and the positive thinking, which has a basis in psychology, by the way. Positive thinking really does help motivate people. It keeps them going when they might otherwise give up. It can spin out into something called wishful thinking, which is that not very grounded in reality thinking I was talking about just a moment ago. But what happens when people try and do magic is that they're trying to rearrange the energy in their life. So one of the unintended consequences of something like prosperity or success magic might be at the cost of your personal life. That your personal energy has been put directly into the prosperity and into the money magic and into the thing and the help me survive and the materialism, which that counterbalancing energy has to come from somewhere. And the unintended consequences might be things like divorce. It might be things like illness. It might be it's always a cost. There are also ways to mitigate that cost, which is whenever you do your balancing work or whenever you're doing your manifestation work, whenever you're trying to make something happen, have a plan in place in the work that you are doing for how you will be the person in charge of counterbalancing that energy. So if you're trying to do a bunch of things to make money, to succeed, you want to have in place your plan for how you will give back so that you have an engineered architecture of how I plan to balance this energy so that I'm not just taking. And that way, your spell work, your manifestation work already contains the balance. It is very unlikely to come from a personal area of your life. If you don't do that work, then you are very likely to have a reshifting or a reassembling of the energies in your life. And that is what an unintended consequence is. And then there's also the thing that when we are doing manifestation work, when we are doing magic work, we have a tendency to think of us being in charge, like I am the master of this. We are calling in forces. They are eternal forces. They are universal forces. They are bigger. They are stronger than us. They don't contain a consciousness for the most part. That's a really complicated one I won't go into in this particular instance. And so we are trying to be a funnel, we're trying to be a vessel, and we're trying to be the conduit for these particular energies. And if we're not in a good energetic space, things can go wrong. Meaning the state of mind that you're in when you do magic really, really matters. Whether or not you've energetically balanced beforehand, whether or not you've energetically cleared your space and prepared your tools, all of these things help lessen the impact of unintended consequences. And as a, for instance, like the most famous one, I don't personally do love magic that is influential, making somebody who isn't interested in somebody fall in love with them, because that's emotionally influential magic. And it opens up the practitioner to being influenced. When you open a door, what you're asking for, more can come through it if you're not super, super careful. And I don't do emotionally influential magic because I really wouldn't be comfortable with somebody doing it to me. And so I don't do much of it. And when I say don't do much of it, I will do healing magic that'll help people get through depression, through anxiety, through codependency recovery, through abuse recovery. So that can be emotionally influential, but intent is everything in magic. And so I have nothing but a healing intent, and I'm channeling and funneling divine energy, and there's no personal cost to me because my intent it's to make somebody else well. It's healer's magic. So that's the type of love magic I will do, because universal love is a form of love magic. But the one that most people are most likely to reach for are love or money spells. Now, if you're doing breakup magic, as a for instance, if your personal happiness comes at the cost of another's life, the structure of their reality, if you're trying to take somebody else's person, expect a multiplied loss in your own life. And it may not be one-to-one, it may not be in a romantic capacity. There is a way to avoid that. I spoke about it and how to safely do love magic in a video I did for YouTube. And that is quite simply, when you do the, hey, break these people up, add in something to attract that person's soulmate. And then you've balanced the karmic scale, so they'll end up happier. You take their emotional world into consideration instead of viewing them as like a rival or a foe. You want good things for them too. That keeps you in energetic and karmic balance. So these are the kind of things that you can structure in to minimize your unintended consequences. If you don't normally do your energetic work with the grounding, the balancing, the calling in the elements, what you're going to want to do before you do any manifestation work, and this does for the law of attraction as well, is do a chakra balancing. That is C-H-A-K-R-A. Chakra is, I believe the literal meaning is wheels. There are energy wheels along our meridians, along our spine, that if you get them into alignment before you do work, it will help maximize the energy flow through you, and it will take less from you. So chakra balancing, look it up on YouTube. There are many different sources. If you don't do it regularly, you're going to want to do it for at least an hour. If you do it sporadically, do it for a half an hour. And if you're like me and you do it every single time you turn around, you can do one of the 5 to 10 minute videos as well. Get your energetic and house in order before you do your magic work. It will limit and minimize unintended consequences. So that's the good news, is that the more careful you are, the less drastic they will be. Now I'm going to tell you a couple stories about what happened with unintended consequences. And I had struggled for a really long time about how I was ever going to tell the story of the magic that I did when I was still married. And the first thing I need to admit to is that I used to do prosperity magic for my ex-husband all the time. Before we were married, even, I did 7-year spells. I did a total of 2 of them, I believe. No, 3, except the third one's the one I need to talk about. So I did these very potent spells, and he did know about them, by the way. It's part of the reason that he decided he didn't like magic. And he became more and more focused on money. So that was the unintended consequence, is that he devalued people more and more, and he valued money almost exclusively. And so that was the consequence within my own life, was that the person I was married to became colder and colder and unkinder and more punishing. And he went more and more towards substance abuse and a couple of other things. Now, I started doing that magic before I really understood unintended consequences, and that I had not taken the steps to prepare for them. Now, luckily, I was always somebody who was interested in charitable works and giving back and nonprofits. And so I kept that scale pretty balanced in our background. And it really didn't start to cost him until we really got to California. And that was not, what was going on with him was not a consequence of the magic that I did. The consequence of the magic that I did for him was he has a couple of things where he might be on the autism spectrum scale. I'm not sure. He might have some other personality disorder stuff going on. I'm not a diagnostician. I can't officially say what's going on with him, other than he struggles with empathy. So empathy is a little foreign to him, and he has a difficult time reading other people's emotions, which is a big cross to bear in the professional world. And I did a lot of magic to try and smooth that stuff over, to try and help him succeed. But because it was a codependent relationship, what happened was he resented me more and more and more and more. And I don't think he understood that most of what was going on in his life was a consequence of some magic that I had done when it came to the trajectory of his professional world. And in fact, over the course of time, he became convinced that he was the person doing things rather than it was me. Even though I've always had incredibly good timing and like he could probably spot it, he thought it was him and that I was disposable, and began treating me worse and worse and worse and worse. And he didn't realize that I was more aware of what he was doing than he thought. He kept claiming that he could go to the future. This was what convinced me that he was not well, that I couldn't leave him because he was sick, because I knew it would be wrong to leave a sick person. And there is some delusional mental illness in his family. He has a sister who has suffered from schizophrenia and a couple of other things for many, many years. And so I thought it was possible that it had afflicted him as well. So I was staying with him because he kept talking about being able to like have these lucid dreams and go into the future and see everything in perfect detail. I've been psychic my entire life. I know that's not how it works. We don't get that much personal power. We don't. It's part of the reason that so many psychics struggle within their personal world, is because we see what we want to see when we look into our own cards. And so you have to just kind of read the energies versus trying to find the details when you're reading for yourself. It usually works best as a healing tool versus the predictive tool. So I did all this magic in our lives, and he started treating me worse and worse because he thought he was the person doing it. And so therefore I was disposable. And as he became more and more, he would tell me he had gone to the future. He would tell me these things, and I became more and more concerned for his mental health and thought he was having some kind of breakdown related to overworking. He quits his job. He starts a business. I was like, well, I can't leave him just as he started a business. I don't want to be cruel to him. I just didn't want to be married to him any longer. He was being horrible to me, including right before he quit his job. We had gone on a business trip together to St. Louis. And a woman that he had been talking about a great deal, a person at his work. When I was introduced to her, she looked exactly like me, only she's 15 years younger. And it was pretty clear that if it was not a physical affair, it was an emotional affair. I have nothing against that woman. She was perfectly delightful. And I think she actually broke things off with him, whatever was going on, directly afterwards, because he proceeded to act like he hated me from that point forward. We had to go on a cruise together. It was one of the most miserable experiences of my life, even though it was very, very beautiful. I cannot even go into how badly he was treating me. He treated me like I was an affliction. And so he starts this business, and I do the third spell that I'm referring to. And I cannot go into every single detail on this because it would take me 3.5 hours to describe the intricacy of the landing of this spell. But I did it to help him prosper because he knew I was going to be doing magic. He saw the spell. He claimed to be afraid of it. But he was gaslighting me a lot, so he may have been pretending. So he knew that I was doing this work, and I actually put an emphasis on make him grow, make him learn. Because prospering is not just money, it is growth, it is expansion. And so that was it. And then I also called in 7 archangels and said, protect me from this man, do whatever you have to. And there is one little proviso that I'm going to tell something here, that every single person who practices magic or does any form of witchcraft or who does any form of craft is going to gasp in horror and say, please tell me you broke the spell from that point forward. No, I didn't. So this is a gigantic spell with no less than 12 candles involved. It takes place over 7 days, and you have to move the candles closer and closer to their target over the course of 7 days. On about day 2 or 3, we've got, there's 12 candles on this table. It's an altar. I have to chase one of my dogs through the house because they've got something they're not supposed to. Go back past the altar way too quickly, and I slam into it with my head. All of the candles crush down. And that's the point where literally everybody who does magic says, oh my God, you didn't just pick them up and redo the spell, did you? Do you understand that that brought incredible destruction into your spell? Yes, I did. But I was terrified of my ex-husband at that point because he was pretending to go to the future, or thought he really was. I just don't know. I was more and more convinced that he might be dangerously delusional. And so I was like, no time, can't do this all over again, only have these supplies. He hates me doing magic anyway. Not going to tell him I have to start all over again because I made a dreadful mistake. And I picked every single one of those candles up, and I went on from there. And oh my God, could you ever tell from the results of that, which were almost immediate? And I will spare you every single last detail. I'm going to laugh a little bit because it's also absurd, and then it's also a trauma response. But one of the things that came in to protect me was that in the whole idea of codependent transference, which is a form of addiction transference, those rebound relationships people have, it's almost a little bit inevitable. And by a little bit, I mean, it's pretty much inevitable when you're at a truly codependent space that you will transfer that need onto another person. So mine transferred onto somebody. I've gone into that why I was like, even like logically, I was like, there's no way on earth this person I knew to be emotionally abusive towards the person that he was with. There were pictures of him purposefully glaring at his long-term person, and he's a very large man. He was a very, very heavy drinker, and he also smoked pretty much in a chain smoke capacity. Now, that energy really, really matched my ex-husband at such a level, and he's very intelligent and very articulate and very well read, all of which also describe my ex-husband. So I literally transferred onto an almost carbon copy of his energy, and I was aware of it. I was aware of it. I knew this person had a very inflated sense of self, but it kept me safe. Because what I really wanted to do was leave that relationship behind, and I really wanted to be alone, because that's how difficult the relationship had been for me for many years. It was an emotionally void place. I was staying in it, trying so desperately to get my son to have a good start in life. I really, really wanted to do whatever I could for him. It got to the point where it wasn't healthy for my son either, because my ex-husband was starting to turn on him, which he had done before in the past. He has a lot of his own issues. So I transferred onto this person I was completely safe from. My ex-husband would, within 3 days of me telling him, listen, I can't do anything with you any longer, I just can't. He bumped into somebody who, I am going to laugh here. And if I do, please forgive me. I'm not laughing at like, it must have hurt him. It was terrible, I'm sure. I've often said that people with my background usually end up as prostitutes, drug addicts, or in jail. And it's true. And I just got the best possible outcomes in all of those particular areas. Well, he bumped into somebody, had this giant transfer. She looked almost exactly like a combination of me and the girlfriend he had before me. And so it was really just like, that was stunning to me. And she had an abuse background, and she had a PTSD background. And then she had actually been a sex worker, which he would find out later through her ex-husband, but he didn't realize at the time. And he thought this was his soulmate, and he runs around, he moves in with her in a month, he introduces her to God and everybody. And so it was really, it cost him a great deal in what it looked like to other people. But I'm very much sure that like the spell I did was like protect me, do anything you have to, just make sure I'm protected from this situation. It had me transfer onto somebody that it was never going to work out with. Was it painful? Yes, but I had a logical understanding of why it never should. And for him, it transferred onto somebody who was in it just for a monetary gain, who had a background in sex work, and who was very, very unstable. So like me, but like a nightmare version with the trauma thing, because I've shared in the past that I'm not a super romantic person. And so when I married my ex-husband, I did love him. I really did love him. I loved his sense of humor. We could laugh a great deal. We could have very like in-depth intellectual discussions. But I was aware I was not romantically in love with him, and I had never been with anybody. So it wasn't something I was missing. I thought that was just how I was built. And so, it's a fair assessment to say, well, you married him for security. It's like I did, but it was for my son, so I've never really punished myself for that one. It's not something I would ever do again, but I did that knowing that he had all of these problems with empathy and emotional connection that it wasn't like I was keeping him from the love of his life. It was as if this is the best solution for both of us. And is that a giant rationalization? Perhaps. And I did discuss the unintended consequences of all of the prosperity magic I did for him, which was, again, to benefit my son as much as anything, because I am not a materialistic person. That he became less and less like he couldn't get along with anybody. It was difficult. He became very isolated. He wasn't making friends. I can see the ways in which that magic may have cost him, but it was also his choices. Like I was never trying to control him or anything. But this person that he transferred onto was everything that he thought of women anyway. And so she used him up and spit him out and almost got him arrested and all kinds of things within 90 days. And it kept him distracted from me while I was in the worst possible shape and trying to recover from, he had been intentionally triggering PTSD in me over and over again, including that outlandish, I've been to the future, and he would tell me these extreme details. And he got one detail so wrong that I was completely safe from it. And it was when he started telling me this, I said, well, what are we like in the future? Because I already knew I was leaving him. And he said, we're pretty much the same. And I was like, okay, well, he's not psychic. He's not psychic, because I knew there was no way that I was staying. And the more details he added, the more obvious it was not accurate. So blowing up all over the place, it coincides with COVID so that it gets delayed in the court systems, and I'm able to heal, and I'm able to heal, and I'm able to heal. And I meet the one lawyer in Southern California who was not charging me through this long court battle. I did pay her, by the way. I actually had to insist on it. She tried not to charge me. I had multiple legal professionals give me their services at greatly reduced costs or for free, because they were appalled with the way he was acting. But then also, I think it was just part of the magic that I had done. So I did make sure my lawyer was paid. But among other things, I was writing the responses to his lawyer, who was a shark and like a very sinister figure, really. And I had this little white hat of a lawyer who was like, well, it's okay, I won't send the invoices until you're ready to pay them. She was just the sweetest person. Really, really good person, but she's not evil. And at one point she's like, if you need to get like a really evil lawyer, I will not blame you, but I can't do this. It's like, it's okay. I understand how his mind works. I will write the letters. You can look them over to make sure they're all the right legal information, and then you send them. And in fact, that is what, there's a lot more to this story that has to do with a little bit of I guess I would call it a little bit of a trap that I didn't realize I was laying for him, but I was very much guided to do so. So he got hoisted by his own petard a lot in that area. And because there are disabled people in his family, and because PTSD is a form of disability, and I was horrified that he had essentially been torturing somebody with a disability by triggering PTSD in me over and over again on purpose, and then doing what abusers do, which is blaming me for my reactions. That's a classic, gaslighting move as well. Look what you made me do, and like you're so horrible to deal with when you're all triggered after I purposely triggered you, that kind of thing. That all resolves, and at the end of it, I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do to protect other people from him? Because I'm really divinely guided and I'm smart and I do magic and like I have psychic gifts. And so I was able to extract myself from that, even though it was hairy and there's a lot more to it than that story just tells you. But those are three of the elements. Like the lawyer who was like, it's okay if you don't pay me. Is a little bit of a miracle, I would say. The fact that I transferred on somebody who it was never going to work out with, and I got that on a logical level, but understood as I studied more and more about it, it's like, oh, this is a form of emotional transference. I got it. You transfer onto somebody who fits the energetic or the behavioral template of the person that you are leaving behind to resolve unresolved trauma. It's a very normal psychological thing as well. And then also, like, he got distracted by this person who was his a karma on that one too. But I was concerned about the people in his family after we had parted. And so instead of doing like big bad curse work, I was just like, hey, make him learn. I put a karmic thing in place that is like, just keep teaching him. And the thing that I learned that finally put that thing to rest, that finally put closure on it, was about last March or so. I started having dreams about him every single night, and I had not been. And I woke up each day going, what in the world is that about? So I reached out to a friend of mine who reads tarot, and I asked her, like, hey, what can you see? And she came back to me with like, hey, he's super angry at you and he has a medical problem. And I knew it was a medical problem. And she told me it was erectile dysfunction. She told me he had to take Viagra. And I was like, well, why in the world would I care about that? When I, in my dream world. And I went on with my life. About a month later, I'm talking to my son about generational curses and what it's like when someone is cursed, and like the whole one of the phantom chest pains that can come along with heartbreak curses, and how I was pretty convinced that maybe somebody had cursed my ex-husband that had nothing to do with me because of some symptoms that he had in Missouri, but like he kept going to the doctor and there was nothing wrong with his heart. And as I'm telling this story to my son, he said, wait, there actually is something wrong with his heart. And I had been right when I thought it was something medical after those dreams, that something was going wrong. And the teaching was that he has enough of a heart problem that apparently he can't drink, he can't smoke pot, he can't do, because he has substance abuse issues. I don't know if he's an addict, that's for him to decide one way or the other, but the universe cut him off from substance use, which is far more likely to keep him in line because he is somebody who fears consequences. So that part was all taken care of. So the teach him, make him grow, make him learn, all that magic. I'm leaving out at least 100 different things that made me go, wow, that spell was weird. And I do work with Kali. I have two divine contracts. It's part of the reason I think I don't have a soulmate, is that I have a divine contract with the masculine divine that is about the Archangel Gabriel thing, where I can tell people very needed truths for their life's purpose. And then I have a divine contract with the feminine divine that is to work for Kali, who is the destroyer. She's a force of nature, technically celestial and angelic magic, works with the elements, so it is force of nature work. It can also be called chaos magic, although it's not the chaos magic you might be thinking of. It's not the 1970s chaos magic. So I work with Kali as well. So I have two soul contracts with the masculine divine and the feminine divine. And I think it's part of the reason that like I've really never associated myself with being somebody who falls in romantic love, because it's not really part of me. Because it's not really meant to be. And is that accurate? I don't know. Maybe I'll turn the corner tomorrow and meet somebody and be like, you are my soulmate. But I don't think that's likely. And I'm not invested in it. I'm very happy where I am. And I don't know what's going on with my ex-husband. And all I know is that I made sure that like I was okay in my conscience with every remaining bit of magic that went there, that it was all for protection and all to give him a chance to release his karmic burden before he died, so he didn't carry it forward, so he didn't have to go through the disincarnate phase and a couple of other things for people who've done things they really, really shouldn't. There is a disincarnate phase where they kind of have to either live in the consciousness of a victim where they experience that pain, if they've never made amends for it, or they are a disincarnate spirit where that's where hauntings come from as well. Is it a form of karmic justice? It is, and they do get to move on from that. They do. It's just that until the soul learns the lessons, they either carry it forward into the next life. If they've accumulated too much bad karma, they go through basically a period of whatever you want to call it, limbo. But let's talk about the spell I did recently that is far less convoluted, that will really directly illustrate what an unintended consequence really looks like. I moved into these, they're apartments, but they're set up as townhomes, and there are 3 rows of them, 3 rows of 12. 6 have a little backyard, and 6 are over a garage bay. And over the garage bay, there are actually 12 parking spaces. And I'm going into this for a reason, because the parking space underneath my unit is not my car, but it was the maintenance man's. And he loved old cars. He had some kind of weird deal with a mechanic in LA who would clear them even though they weren't passing smog check. And he has a wife. He had one. It's foreshadowing, subtle foreshadowing. He had a wife who became very jealous of me when she met me. I think just because I got to live in the same amount of space as one person as was being occupied by 5 in her place. A couple of other things probably made her pretty jealous of me, including that her husband appeared to like me. Now, nothing ever happened there. We were just friends. He was a nice enough person. He helped me with a couple of things. But she began harassing me with her car, oddly enough. She would park underneath my unit where I'd have all the windows open because it's beautiful where I live. And she would sit down there and rev her car for 20, sometimes 30 minutes at a time. And it wasn't to warm it up. It was because it poured exhaust into my home, both through the windows, and then also there are vents that pick it up as well. And I spoke to her about it first and being like, maybe you're not aware of this, because they had 2 cars that did it. One was an old VW Bug and one was a Mazda RX-7. And as soon as I spoke to her, I knew it was a mistake, because she's like, oh, you're just going to have to deal with it. And I kind of looked at her like, do you know what you just said to somebody who does magic? You just literally gave me permission to F with you. Now, I did not tell her that, but I gave her a really weird look. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll deal with it then. And so I found out when her birthday was. And she had been harassing me in different ways as well. I won't go into the whole thing, but it was a big enough deal that I was angry when I did the magic. And so the magic that I did where I slammed into it and knocked over half the spell, I was terrified and desperate. And it was cataclysmic. It was just like bombs going off as all of these different places. It was very emotionally disruptive. And you could tell because I was very emotionally disrupted when I did it, but I was also desperate and terrified. When I did this magic, I was just ticked. This person was trying to bully me. I likely had unresolved trauma from the whole marriage thing. And so when I did this magic, even though I did all the alignment, I did all the energy cleansing, I put my tools in order, and I did a binding on her with a banishing. And it's a little bit more complicated than that, but I actually don't want to give people instructions on how to do this type of work if they're not ready for it. And so, well, about a week after I did a binding, and I called in the archangels and I was like, listen, she's flooding my home with exhaust. My dog Puddles, who I adored, had all kinds of respiratory issues. It's one of the things I told her, well, like, hey, could you please stop doing that? Park in another space, because we also have an unassigned parking space if you're going to sit there and warm it up for 30 minutes. And of course, that just made her do it to me more. It could have hurt my dog. I was angry. I am probably rationalizing the amount of anger that I had when I did this particular banishing and binding. So within 2 weeks, I'm walking down the street, and on a flatbed trailer going past me is that guy's VW Bug with the back half torn off. He got clipped on the 101. It tore off a wheel well. It tore off a wheel. And what do they have to do? They have to put it in the bay underneath my townhome so that there is nothing running underneath there. So problem solved within a week. I go out there about 3 weeks later. He's good with mechanics. He's putting the wheel back on. I was like, oh God, no. He tries to start it up. The engine's cracked. So that sits there for 6 months. And I was like, okay, well, problem solved. No biggie. But I had done this binding on her where I knew what her address was. I knew the birth month that she was in. I knew her first and last name. She was hosed, man. She was just screwed because I was angry when I did it and she was harming my dog. And so there was a lot of heat that went into this. So problem solved within 2 weeks. And her entire life fell apart. She relapsed into a drug problem that she had not had in many years. Every time I turned around, the police were here carting her off. Literally in a 4-month period, they were here 10 times. I was really worried. I was like, did I do that? Because I didn't mean to. She had 3 kids. I had no intention of harming her personally. I just wanted the garage bay blocked from any type of, harass me with exhaust. Um, and eventually she gets evicted. And he keeps letting her come back here. And then he gets evicted, even though he's the maintenance man here and he's worked here for 12 years. And then I found out that he is trying to have back surgery to get more from a settlement from that particular car accident. And almost as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh God, he's going to get fired. He is totally going to get fired. I did this. I did this 100% when I did this giant banishing on something that, God help me, I didn't think about the consequence of including their physical address. I had good reason to be doing the magic, and I did a banishing on a person inside of that domicile. And sure enough, he ends up getting evicted because she keeps getting caught here. But he's still working here until he has that surgery, and he's not recovering from it properly. She's long gone, by the way. She's like hopped to another state. She abandoned her 3 children and went off and has had addiction issues ever since. So like, I don't know if what I did accidentally caused her to relapse. I certainly didn't intend that. And I certainly never intended to hurt him, but he couldn't return to work because of a lifting restriction, and so they let him go. So he is actually banished entirely from my life. I'll never see that person again, which is fine with me. We were literally just friends. But I certainly never intended to have him end up a single father. I didn't intend to have him end up unable to work. Are you noticing that all this crap that happened as a result of that? Boy, did they move quickly to be like, no, we see your point. It's fine. Don't be flipping out. We're not going to let anybody abuse you. It's done. And within a week, it was done within a week. And then the repercussions and the ripples of that continued for 2 solid years. And that is just one example of the unintended consequences can be really big. Because now, like, am I going to do magic to try and fix it? No, I'm not going to do magic to try and fix it. I'm just stepping away from that situation, because it also has to do with this karma, because that was a codependent and sick relationship, and, an enabling of an addiction and all kinds of stuff. And at one point he had planned on abandoning his children and told me about it, and I talked him out of it. I feel really bad for his little girls. I really do, because he's got 3 daughters. But I never intended to hurt any of them. And the only thing I did do in the aftermath was protective magic for them. I'm like, please, if I did anything wrong, I didn't mean to. I was not trying to have anybody punished. I was just trying to protect myself and my dog. And both of my dogs, honestly. But those were unintended consequences. I started out just being like, hey, block the garage path for me, because it's bad for me. It's carbon dioxide and monoxide, or whatever it is, carbon monoxide. And it got way out of control because I was super angry when I did it, because I was bringing more to the energetic table because I was still mad at my ex-husband. And I didn't realize that part. Now, do I take full responsibility for like accidentally ruining those people's lives? I think the elements were already present in their lives for it to go boom, but I was the person who lit a match to that bomb. And so, like, do I have to do all kinds of karmic work to have that burden released? I have been doing it ever since I found out that, like, oh, you're going to have surgery. And I knew it wasn't going to go well. I knew it wasn't going to go well. And I told him that. He asked me to look into the cards. I was like, I don't think you should do this. But there was money on the line for him. And so he did it, and it didn't go well for him. And now he doesn't have a job. And I hope he has family and everything. The little girls are not going to end up on the street. It's not as dire as all that. But that was an unintended consequence of doing something from a place of anger and not doing enough to protect the people around her. When I did that banishing, I needed to be calm, and I needed to put work into place to make sure that nobody else was harmed. And I didn't do that because I only named her as a target, but I didn't think about the implications of including their physical address. There are always unintended consequences of any magic. It will work in ways, it's part of the reason that you do magic and you let it go. Do not sit there and focus on every single last detail. It will cause it to take longer, even if you're just working with the law of attraction. but always have a place and plan for how to counterbalance the negative energy that comes along with the positive change that you're trying to bring about. Like with the money, you're going to want to have a plan for, I'm going to help fund this, I'm going to give to that, I'm going to be generous to whatever it might be. If you're asking for something to be given to you, you have to have a plan to give back. That's just all it is. And when I did that particular form of binding and banishing, I was just I had a disproportionate response, and my God, could you tell from the after effects. Now, I don't usually do magic to solve problems in my life. I don't, because of the unintended consequences, because there's always going to be something that you can't see, that you may end up being like, now I must fix that. That is why if you think a spell is going wrong, break it. Break it. That story I told at the beginning where I slammed into the altar, knocked everything down, and it was like 7 towers hit my life after that, one after the other. Partially because Kali is represented by the tower, and I frequently show up as the tower in people's readings as well, because it's also divine intervention and epiphanies. So if you cannot tell, I'm very uncomfortable with the idea that I did anything that harmed his family. And I have to keep going back to the fact that, like, I didn't ask her to relapse. I didn't ask any of the things because the law got involved too. I know she was on probation. I know CPS got involved. It was such, and they were fully functional when I moved in here. And that's part of the reason that it was really like, again, lighting that fuse on a bomb that would blow everything apart. But sometimes things have to blow apart so they can come back in a more functional form. As a, for instance, whatever happens with his daughters, what I had to finally understand is maybe they're best being in some way removed from the influence of these chaotic and unwell people. Because unfortunately, the guy in the sky, he's quite a liar. He lies all the time. And I would catch him doing it. And it reminded me again of my ex-husband. The unintended consequences that come along with magic, there's no full way to absolutely predict them, because magic is creation. And if it creates something positive, there is a negative creation as well. The best you can do is plan for it and guard against it, but to understand that magic comes with a cost. Everything comes with a cost. When you are trying to, that's why walking forward in good intent, and your intent is the thing most likely to protect you. But I did not have bad intent with that spell that just went. Would I call that a misfire? No, I would call that like I was trying to set off a smoke bomb, and instead it was a nuclear reactor that melted down in their lives. It was way bigger than I ever intended it to be. I did eventually release it, by the way. I did eventually release it after I was 100% positive there was no way she could be in my life ever again. And I'm leaving out some details about drug dealers that came here and some additional harassment and all kinds of things. And I'm not doing drugs or anything, so it had nothing to do with me, but it was making me feel very unsafe. And it ended up doing the manager here a giant solid, because she had to work with him and he lied quite a bit. And that woman had chased a person with, this is true. Years earlier, she had chased another tenant with a hatchet. And they claimed this great big story where it was somehow the tenant's fault. And so the landlord evicted the tenant. And very clearly it was that she had all kinds of behavioral issues, because she did have multiple disorders. And so did the magic that I do, did it exacerbate it? Almost certainly. Am I fully on the hook for all of those consequences? No, she still got to make her choices. But I don't feel good about it. And it is one of the reasons that, like, whenever you're in doubt, don't do spell work. Ask your guides to help you. Sit and meditate and ask for a solution to be brought to you, because as soon as you start doing spell work, it's like a magnifying glass for your energy. And that's the one regret I have. The one regret I have around all of that is I wish I'd just meditated and asked, because I know that also works. Whenever I have a problem, I'm like, hey, I need a solution. Please help me. Tell me what to do. And it always happens. It always happens. I always know what to do when I need to do it. And I can figure out things I don't have prior knowledge on as well, like how to make certain things work and all kinds of things like that. So I know that kind of like ask my guides for guidance and to lead me down a path that will solve a problem is the better solve. But I will completely admit that it was anger that made me reach directly for, oh, you need me to deal with it, do you? I'll be dealing with that then. And I went inside and I immediately prepared for probably the most severe bind. No, there's one other person. A really, really, really severe binding on somebody that included a banishing. And I shouldn't have done the banishing part. And if you didn't pick that up, that's the part that got me into trouble. And am I in trouble? I've done everything in the world I can to try and make amends for that. And the way I live my life, I'm always trying to help other people and help other people recover from trauma. And when you make a mistake, which anybody can do, all you can do is do your very best not to repeat it, and you make up for it in your changed actions going forward. So am I karmically on the hook? Very unlikely to be so. But was it a lesson I had to learn that whenever I'm doing defensive or protective magic, do the least I can do, rather than, which is what I did, was instead of being like, all right, so what I need you to do is bind her from occupying that particular space. That was all I needed to do. But instead I did a binding and a banishing. And the banishing, oh my word, did it ever work. It just happened to work on every single soul in that particular family because I included the address. So this is why things can misfire, and you'll be like, oh God, it is what I asked for, but it's so much worse. And there are all kinds of jokes and memes on Instagram of like people who do magic sitting back and going, oh, there's that spell that I did when I was angry. Oh, and it's working, and oh God. You really are just horrified by the end results. So try to only do magic or manifestation work when you're in a clear and a calm and a peaceful and preferably a joyful state, because your emotional state when you are doing magic will absolutely impact your results. I was angry when I did that binding and banishing, shouldn't have done the banishing part. Learn from me. And then in the spell that I sort of referred to when it came to protecting myself and invoking 7 archangels, which, like, I know better than to do that. I don't need to go that hard on something. But I was genuinely, genuinely beginning to be afraid that it's like, well, how sick is he? Is he going to hurt me? I was really genuinely afraid for my life at that point. And is that accurate? Looking back, because he fears consequences, he almost certainly wasn't going to kill me, but I think he was pretty hopeful that I'd kill myself or something, because he really wanted to get rid of me. But I'll never know that. I can't know that one way or another. That is just pure conjecture on my part based on what I can see from the past. We've never had a conversation about it, and we never will have a conversation about it. But in that particular one, the mistake I made was, if you've done something, if something has gone wrong within a spell, understand, like slamming into an altar and knocking everything down with a resounding effing crash. I'm surprised none of the candles broke. It was that hard. I really clipped it. If something like that goes wrong, don't do what I did. Do the normal thing. Sit down, write a petition to break it, do the breaking work, and start all over again. And try to meditate, try to be calm, try to be in a happy state, set some music in the background that'll help set your mood. It's best if it doesn't have any lyrics, because that can influence your results as well. And if you're solely working with the law of attraction, remember, as you are envisioning getting all the things that you want, envision what you're going to do as an act of gratitude, and that will help you as well. And whenever you're doing love magic, because people are going to do love magic, it's normal. I did it when I was much younger as well, because I didn't understand the consequences of it going forward. Whenever you're doing some form of love magic, always, have it be in the service of the highest good of all involved. That'll make sure it might not work, but that'll tell you something. And then whenever you're like, hey, that person, I want that person, but they're with somebody else and I'm convinced it's a toxic relationship, do magic to benefit the person who is going to be left bereft. Do magic to bring in their soulmate, to bring in happiness, to bring in success, to bring in healing, to bring in joy, and you help counterbalance any karmic retribution that might be felt in your own life. And that makes it all sound very punishing. You just want to think of it as a scale that's being balanced, or an account. When you make a withdrawal, when you're making, when you're putting the energy into something, I'm spending my energy on trying to make this happen. There's a deficit that has to be filled in a negative capacity, and that is the counterbalancing energy. Keep that in mind whenever you're doing something. And when you see negative consequences, you can break the spell. I really, really suggest breaking the magic before you try to do any corrective magic, because people have asked me, how do you fix a spell that's going wrong? It's like, just break it and do it again. break it, ask that all consequences have been released. And did I release that binding with the banishing? Oh God, yes, I did. And I did it before I found out that his surgery had gone wrong. I did do that, but he already committed to the surgery. For all I know, he'd already had it. But he is well and truly banished because he doesn't work here any longer. And there's actually a restraining order where they're not allowed on the property because of all the shenanigans with the police. So that was the unintended consequences, how to prepare for them a little bit, why I'm always like, clear your space, make sure you're meditated, make sure you're grounded, make sure you've done all this groundwork. You will get better results, but then you also, because it's not a great feeling. Anybody who's been listening to me for a while or has ever worked with me knows that it is an absolutely horrifying thought to me that I in any way damaged the home life of 3 little girls who I would never have been ever okay with the idea of take away their home and their security. Now, I know in the long run that may be what's best for them because it was such a toxic home and maybe it didn't have anything to do with what I did. But I do know that in the future, if I ever do magic to solve that type of problem again, I will be so, 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 so very careful. And then it also taught me with the stuff I did with my ex-husband to extract myself from that relationship. And it involved other people. And it was just like even the person I was referring to that he met, like that's just a wounded soul with her own wounds. Like she's not pure evil or something. She's just screwed up. Who that was the person he transferred on and kept him busy for like the 90 days it would take for me to be able to function at all, because he was the only person I had ever loved and trusted up to that point. So you cannot imagine how heartbroken I was when I met my replacement on that business trip. And she looked exactly like me. Now she was Latina, so she was very slightly, like there was this very slight skin tone difference, and that was it. Other than that, she basically had my face. It was really, really disconcerting. And the people on that trip, of course, treated me like I was blind because I'm so, so good at emotional repression that it looked like I didn't know at all, that I was completely in the dark. They must thought I was the, biggest naive fool in the entire world, when in fact, it's like, no, I was just really skilled at never showing my emotions because I'd lived with them for 18 years at that particular point. And it wasn't safe to show emotions around my ex-husband because he punished people for them. So having said all that, is it okay to do magic to protect yourself? And is there something that will help you and help protect you from, like, if you make a mistake like that? Yeah, there is. And that is one of the reasons that whenever you do magic, call in your guides, your guardians, your ancestors, and your angels. And you ask very specifically, please do not let this work cause any unintended or damaging consequences to those I would not wish to be involved. That is not what I did. I did not do that when I did that binding and banishing, because I was ticked off. I was mad. And I will, for the rest of my life, have to sit here and wonder how much of that is on me, because I would never have tried to hurt his family. I just didn't want her filling my home up with exhaust. And from the magic that I did, like 5 people and a couple of pets really had their home life challenged. And it might have happened anyway. Is there always the possibility that it's like, hey, you're superimposing all of this because you did that and then this happened and you think, correlation is not causation? Sure, it's possible, except it's over and over and over and over and over and over and over again that I see these things. I once needed to sell a house above market to extract my ex-husband from a mistake that he had made. And I did it, but I didn't fool those people at all. I kept telling them how much the house would be worth in 5 years, and I was right. I was not in any way, but it was very weird. They had a sale in the same neighborhood fall through. Our house was the only one that was very similar. We handled the sale. It solved a financial problem for him. I found the next one, flipped that house as well through a very weird set of circumstances where I ended up buying a home inspector's house. Long story. There is so much evidence in my life of that confluence of events, that serendipity, and of the results of magic that I've done. That sure, it could all be like, hey, this is in your imagination and you think these things are related. Once, sure. Twice, sure. 3 times, that's starting to be suspect. 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, 25 times, which is about what I'm up to in my life. There appears to be some reason to believe that there is a chicken and an egg. egg, chicken, that they're very, very related, even if you can't really figure out like the origin point of it, because there's a part of this that the part of you that does the best magic is your highest self, and your highest self exists outside of a timeline, so that everything that you do, you are meant to do. And I will tell you that I have been so much more cautious about trying to solve a confrontational problem via magic, and I will be for the rest of my life because of what I accidentally did. And can I claim full responsibility for that? No, I can't. But I also can't let myself completely off the hook, because whereas I cannot prove or have any real knowledge of, are you sure I didn't do that? I will always have that question, and it will make me more careful going forward. So whenever I do these sort of episodes, it's so that you can help, you can learn from the things that I've learned as well. It's powerful stuff. When you play with manifestation, the law of attraction, or magic, you are channeling universal energy. And it really is like, are you juggling with nitroglycerin sometimes, or TNT, glycerin, nitroglycerin? And I kind of was on that first one. That one I will always let myself fully off the hook with, because I didn't harm a soul that was innocent in that, trust me. And it really did extract me. And the perfect timing on that has always astounded me, because COVID slowed the courts down so much that I was able to recover enough that I would be able to take on the lead role in defeating my ex-husband in a divorce battle, which is what happened. So that has been Unintended Consequences and Magic. It's a cautionary tale. It's a cautionary tale. Everybody will screw up when dealing with universal forces sometimes. The more caution, the more reverence, the more patience. Remember, always have patience, because, oh, that's before we go, one last thing. You have to have patience with the work that you've done. Don't assume it's not working because you don't see the results in a month. It often, to really shift reality, takes 6 months for a spell to really manifest. It's not immediate. You've put the request in, and it's like the court systems that move slowly, so does the karmic justice systems. Don't do more and more and more and more magic, because that does create either a block or sometimes catastrophic results as well. So always wait. And if you really think a spell is not working, I did all the spell, it's not working, break it and start again. Don't do magic on top of magic on top of magic, because you will create the biggest tangle of energy that you've ever seen. So this has been Logical Magic, examining esoterica. Hey, learn from my mistakes, because God knows I've made them. You can find me at therisingmoon.com. You can find me at Chromecast at the Rising Moon on YouTube, and you can find me at my Patreon as well. And very clearly, almost everything that I do actually succeeds. But whenever I make a mistake, I try and share the details of it, so that because that's what we're all here to do, is to help each other avoid the pitfalls of our existence. And that is one of the ways to avoid some pitfalls. So unintended consequences, you can't fully avoid them, but you can prepare for them to the best of your ability. Take care, be well, be careful when you're doing magic.